It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Browns' assistant women's tennis coach, Coach Sophia Geier. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching and college women's tennis?
Yeah, I think I definitely knew that I wanted to be a college tennis coach while I was still in college and a player myself. And I'm very thankful that I got to be a graduate assistant coach at Akron. So that really kind of told me, okay, this is the path I want to go into. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't go straight into college coaching after I graduated because that was COVID. And during COVID, honestly, um, assistant positions were mostly frozen. There was nobody was hiring assistant coaches anyway, so I didn't start off after I graduated with college coaching, but I went into it as soon as I could.
What was that experience like going to Akron and getting to play collegiate tennis?
I had the best 6 years of my life, to be honest, and thankfully I actually got to be there 6 years, not just 4 years, so that made the whole thing even better. Yeah, I mean, I left Akron having met the best friends I could imagine, and I had honestly the best time on and off the court. I think people ask me a lot of the times, why Akron? Because coming from Germany, and I had never been to the States before I came. And I really don't have a good answer, I don't think. I just thought, when I was looking for college, I was just thinking, where do I like the coach? Where do I like the campus? And I just thought, okay, I'll just go for a year and see what happens. I can always go home. And then I obviously ended up staying there for 6 years. But I was always very proud playing for the University of Akron. I think coming from Germany, where college is free, I definitely valued having a full scholarship and being able to go to the US, not having to pay for it, and kind of just getting the full experience. So I really valued that.
What was that experience like, as you said, being an international student and coming to a school like Akron?
Definitely scary at first, I would say, being by yourself, with all your family behind. But I always, when I was still in high school, I always kind of wanted to go, be independent, be on my own. And I think that was the best way to do it. So I don't regret anything, yeah.
How was that feeling like the first time you got to put on that jersey as a collegiate athlete?
Obviously that was quite a while ago, but definitely a lot of pride. And I always felt like it mattered what I did on the court as well as off the court, but especially on the court. Like I always, that probably sounds pretty cheesy, but Akron was, or the team was, my family away from home. So I always try to, represent Akron and the team as well as I could.
While on the court, what were some of your biggest accomplishments?
Um, Probably, I mean, on paper, I would say probably being named the MAC Conference Player of the Year twice, my junior and my senior year. I also received the ITA Most Improved Senior Award. And then I received a PNC Achiever Award, which is within the University of Akron. That was related both to academics as well as athletics. But to be honest, personally, I think what I was most proud of was the way I developed my game throughout college. Because when I first came in, I was playing number 5 and 6 singles, sometimes, fighting for a spot in the lineup. And then I kind of played my way up in the lineup to then play number 1 singles for 2 years straight. And so I think looking back, that's probably, personally, that was definitely my biggest achievement.
What was that feeling like for you, as you said, playing number one singles?
I, I mean, I think what was nice for me is that I when I first came in, I had to work really hard and I had to fight for my spot in the lineup. So I felt like I knew what it was like to, feel a lot of pressure. At the time, it was only pressure to be in the lineup. But then I wouldn't say that it added a lot of pressure thinking, I really want to play number one. It's just kind of something that I transitioned into. And after or during my junior year, I had a great record. I had a great couple of months playing number one. So it's kind of like I just got used to the pressure and handling the pressure really.
What was that transition like going from being an athlete to getting into coaching and coaching at your alma mater of Akron?
It wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. I think what helped was that I was pretty familiar with, how are things done at Akron, and I knew my way around pretty well, and I knew who to talk to, and if I needed help, who to ask for it. I was nervous at the start, of course, going from being a teammate to then being a coach. That was somewhat nerve-wracking at the start, but the girls at Akron, they made it pretty easy for me. So I had a pretty easy transition.
While at Akron as an assistant coach, what was that like, and what were some of the things that you accomplished?
Unfortunately, we didn't get to play a season when I was the graduate assistant, so I started in the fall. Of course, we have a fall season, although even the fall season was very tricky because the head coach had just resigned. So I was actually by myself as a graduate assistant for the first, I think, 6 or 8 weeks, which, that was probably harder than transitioning into coaching. I was all of a sudden supposed to do everything for a month and a half. But once we had a coach who I was already familiar with, all that went well. But then we went into the season and the season ended because of COVID. So like my first year in college coaching was definitely interesting, I would say.
How was that like going to Kenyan College and becoming the assistant there?
I had a really great time at Kenyan College for 2 years. I think I learned a lot about myself as a person and as a coach as well. And that was really like the first real coaching opportunity that I got. And I think at the time when I took the job, it felt like a little bit of a risk going from, playing Division I and getting experience in the Division I setting to a Division III program, which I was very unfamiliar with. But I think what it really taught me was how to combine high level tennis and a high academic level, because Kenyan College definitely was very rigorous academically. And so that was super helpful. And then I think even though I was the assistant for both men's and women's, which was also my first time, I had never coached men's college tennis before, which I actually really enjoyed. But I felt like the head coach there, he gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of say in how to coach the team. That I felt very independent, and I had a lot of fun, like calling the shots as well, even though I really wasn't in charge.
What was that experience like, as you said, getting to coach both the women's side of tennis and the men's side of tennis?
I would say that they're both familiar in a lot of ways, or like they're very similar in a lot of things, but also very different in other ways. It's not just a stereotype that there's a lot more drama on a women's team, but that you would think, okay, boys must be so much easier because they're boys, but there's other things going on there. But I would say boys are usually very hard workers, and they want to play and they want to get better and they want to work really hard. So that was fun.
What was that experience like going from Division I to Division I Ivy League and coming to Brown?
Oh, going from Division III to Division I?
Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways there were similarities. So when it comes to academics, of course, Kenyan was no Ivy League by any means, but I definitely think that I had learned a lot about, like I said, how to combine tennis and academics. And I think that prepared me somewhat well when it comes to Brown. But then, of course, like Brown is an even higher academic school as well as the tennis level at Brown is obviously definitely above average. And so I would say the biggest difference between the two is probably the intensity both on and off the court. I would say at Brown, everything's very intense. You know, the girls' class schedule and what they do in the classroom, that's intense, but everything we do on the tennis court is highly intense.
For you, what was that feeling like getting that call from Brown to come join the coaching staff?
Just pure excitement, probably. I was very proud of myself too, for, you know, trying, because I didn't know if I should apply, if I could get the chance or not. But yeah, I was just mostly excited.
What was that feeling like the first time you got to step onto campus and get to experience a match?
I mean, obviously campus is beautiful, Rhode Island's beautiful. I think, yeah, like the first match was definitely nerve-wracking at the same time. I mean, but that was the same at Kenyan, that was the same at Akron. I think those things stay the same. It's just a matter of accepting that and just doing your best.
What does a typical game day look like for you for a tennis match?
I mean, it's generally very simple, I would say, compared to, you know, other sports. But a lot of work for the coaches, and well, we don't have, I mean, in college tennis, we don't really have half times, we don't have breaks in between matches. So it's like, you know, once a match starts, it goes all the way without any major interruptions. But a usual game day, I mean, we meet, or the team gets together about 90 minutes before the start of the match, and then, you know, we go over important things with the team. But then usually we leave them to it about 80 or 70 minutes before the match starts, and then the girls usually start warming up about an hour before match start, and that involves like that involves a lot. Physical warm-up, mental warm-up, you know, we do breathing, we do visualization. They do all that on their own. They're very independent when it comes to that, so they do all that on their own. But then, so they go out an hour before the match starts, and they warm up with their partner, which usually is the doubles partner. And so you stick with the same person during the warm-up. And then about 10 minutes or so before the match starts, you know, we take a bathroom break. Everybody can kind of do last minute things that they need to do. And then we have our little pre-match talk, and then the girls will do their cheer, and then we get started. And then, so in college tennis, you always start with 3 doubles matches, and then that's followed by 6 singles matches, and there's only one 5-minute break in between. And so after those 6 singles matches are over, that's pretty much it.
Leading up to days before game day, what is that preparation like for you as a coach, and how do you prepare for your athletes?
I mean, a lot obviously depends on if it's a home or an away match, but I would definitely say, you know, match days don't really start the day off the match, and it starts at least the day before, especially when we have home matches. I mean, I'm mostly, I have to make sure that all the girls' rackets are strung, and that's like a full-time job, because every girl has about 4 rackets, and they all want them all strung before the matches. So I do a lot of stringing before. And then, you know, I make sure that the courts are set up, that the nets are in the right height, that we have enough balls for the matches. And then I always prepare lunch orders. So we always order through an app, and then, you know, I make sure it's being picked up at the right time or delivered at the right time. We buy snacks for the girls, which is also a lot of responsibility, because everybody's very picky, and so you have to have the right snacks and the right fuel. And then lastly, a big part of my role is actually video recording. So we record all of our matches, or everybody's match on their court. We use a software, it's called Swing Vision. And so I have to make sure that every court is set up with a camera, and that, you know, that it's recording the entire match. And I think that's, I mean, but once the match starts, I mean, then we're kind of all in it together, like coaches, players on the court, players off the court. I mean, the girls that are on the bench that day, they're just as important as the girls that are playing, to be honest. Like, they all have a job to do. And just because they're not competing doesn't mean that they're not important. And then like when the match starts, we expect full focus and effort from everybody involved.
What does a typical match atmosphere look like when you play teams like Yale and Harvard and Princeton, who are in Ivy League schools?
I mean, way more intense than any other match during the season. So in general, I would say conference matches are a lot more heated. And if you watch let's say a professional tennis match, or or you watch it on TV, it's always very quiet. I think I always find it funny. I mean, you watch matches on TV and there's a phone ringing super high in the stands, and the players pretend that they can't serve, or they miss the serve because somebody was whispering. Like at a college match, that's very, very different. It's generally very loud, especially during a conference match, because most teams, they constantly scream, they constantly talk to each other, cheer each other on. And like that's kind of, I mean, that's part of the deal. You want your team to be as loud and supportive as possible. And that, like, I mean, that even arrives as soon as they get to the facility, like cheering is part of the warm-up as well. So that doesn't even just start once the match starts, it starts as soon as they get there. And of course, non-conference matches, they matter. They prepare you for the season, but really everything that's leading up to the Ivy season, it's all just preparation. So nothing's as important as conference matches.
What is that like getting to play some of those teams that aren't Ivy League schools like Rutgers and Portland?
That's still, I mean, it's still fun. And I think at the end of the day, every match matters, especially to you when you're playing, right? You always want to try your best, and you want to fight really hard. But those are more, I would say, those are mostly, I mean, the Ivy season is at the end of the season. So everything before, like I said, it's preparation. And so that's the time where, we try things, we try different strategies, game plans for all the girls. And so there's more trial and error involved than it is when you actually play a conference match.
As a coach, what is some of your favorite games that are non-conference games?
Probably when the way we schedule, we try to schedule as many high level opponents as we can, so that means teams that are ranked top 50, top 30. And so for those, we usually, we travel quite far. But those are probably the matches we're looking forward to the most. And it's not even so much us trying to beat a team that's ranked 20 in the country. It's more so, can we win some points? Can we win some sets? Can we basically make them sweat a little bit? And so, yeah, those are, and then when we always travel for spring break. And so that's always fun, because we travel quite far for a couple of matches. And so, it seems like everybody always cares then, because it's like, okay, like we took this trip it took us all day to get here. So now let's work really hard.
What are some of your notable memories and moments coaching against some of those Ivy League schools like Princeton, Yale, and Harvard?
To be honest, if you look at our record from last year, and since this is the only season I can talk about, because this was my first season at Brown, but if you look at our results, we really didn't do very well. But I would say, I mean, for me, highlights definitely were the fact that even matches that we lost and we could have beaten them, we were on the right path to beat them. We could have beaten Princeton, who won their season last year. We were 2 points away, 1 point in doubles and 1 point in singles. We ended up losing. that match, but we could have won. And so I guess that's just motivation and fuel for what's ahead.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to become a tennis player?
I would say, I mean, there's probably a general timeline for everybody, but the recruitment process is definitely different depending on the division that you're looking at, and then even the conference. So for us, if you're looking, you know, let's say for the fall of 2025, we finished recruiting for that class in June. So, you know, we're fully focused on the class of 2026 at this point. But I think that's very unique to the Ivy League, because there's a lot of girls who just now started looking for a spot for the fall of 2025. So I would say in general, Ivy League is a little bit ahead. But I think if I can make a suggestion, I would say, you know, as an athlete, you should sit down, you should make a list of non-negotiables for you. So things you're looking for in the right school and the right tennis program, and then probably reach out to as many coaches as possible. Because we always appreciate girls taking initiative and reaching out themselves, and then always send along as much information as possible as early as you can. Transcripts, grades, videos, results, all that, because that just helps us, that makes it easier for us. But you know, we always start with initial Zoom calls or phone calls, and then we'd like to see the girls play that we're interested in, and then that's followed by you know, a visit. We need to do academic pre-reads to make sure that the girls are viable to come to Brown. So yeah, there's a lot involved in the process.
As a coach, what are some of the things that you look at in those prospective student athletes when out on the road recruiting?
Number one, and I think, I mean, that's self-explanatory, but it's still part of, I mean, it's not as easy as you think. We always, you know, think it needs to be a good person first. Of course, we want them to be great tennis players, but they need to be good girls as well. And then I would say we have a ranking or a rating where we would say, okay, the girl has to be above. But then, like, it's flexible. We just want to see them play. We want to especially see them compete. So you can have a nice forehand and a nice backhand, but you can still be a terrible competitor. And so being a good competitor, that's really important. And then grades, GPA, test scores are, unfortunately, they're a must and they're mandatory. And so that always needs to fit with Brown as well.
As a tennis coach, what is it like getting to see your freshmen put on that brown tennis uniform for the first time?
That's always really fun, I would say. And you know, a little bit nerve-wracking at the same time, because you never really know what happens the first time. And to be honest, like, most of the time, the first match they play isn't great. Because especially at a program like Brown, I mean, you know, very high academics and high tennis level. A lot of the times the girls are very hard on themselves, perfectionists almost. So, you know, they have very high expectations for themselves. And so that's really hard to satisfy the first time you go out. But we always I mean, I go into it thinking, you know, okay, go out there and play and we'll see what happens.
What is it like getting to see those freshmen achieve those big milestones in their career?
That's, I mean, super exciting. I think we want the girls to be good tennis players, but I think being at Brown, it's more than that. It's preparing you for the future and get the career that's ahead of you. So we try to support them as much as we can on and off the tennis court. And so, you know, if they achieve things that they're working towards, that makes me very happy.
How will it feel to see those seniors putting on that brown uniform for the last time?
Very sad. But I mean, especially I would say my first senior day at Brown was pretty sad, mostly because I actually met the senior class before I even took the job, because they were involved in my interview process, and they actually got to interview me before I was offered the job. So I felt a pretty strong bond with them, and so I thought they were amazing women, and so seeing them go out for the last time was really sad. But then at the same time, it is just part of the game, and you learn how to deal with it, because it happens every year, right? You gain some, you lose some, and it's part of the sport.
What is it like for you as a coach getting to see those seniors going into coaching after their playing career?
I mean, that would, I would love for that to happen more. So far, that hasn't really happened for me, that, a player of mine then went into college coaching, but hopefully in the future.
What are some of your future plans for the Brown tennis program moving forward?
I mean, we're very excited about this upcoming season. We try to take a pretty holistic approach to the way we compete. Like we try to stay away from putting too much focus and effort into results. So I think if you play a match, there's going to be one winner and one loser, but just because you lose, that doesn't mean that you played poorly, right? Or that you didn't try very hard. So I think this upcoming season, or starting in this fall, actually, our goal is, for the girls to work really hard, to compete really hard, and to just try to fight for every point, and hopefully the results will come with it. But you don't have control over the results. You don't have control over what your opponent's doing. You can only control yourself, and that's definitely a focus we have. Is we want to focus on the controllables and do as much as we can to be successful.
What advice would you have those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college tennis?
I would probably say it won't be perfect, and it won't be easy. I think it's not going to be rainbows and sunshine every day, but that's okay. I think the freshman year is almost always the hardest in every aspect, not just on the tennis court. You're going to be on your own. You're going to be away from your family. All of a sudden, you have tons of responsibilities. But I would say lean on your team. Your team is going to be your support system, and so you should use it as that. And everybody on the team is in it together, so that should be a comforting feeling. And I would say, you need help. You need to ask for it. What
advice would you give those juniors and rising seniors looking to play in their senior year?
Of players who are currently in their senior year of high school, looking to play college tennis?
No, college juniors rising into their senior.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I would say, and I think that's actually something that will happen to most players as they transition into being a senior. But that a lot of the times, that's when all of a sudden, the athletes will say, oh, I wished I had longer. I really need to enjoy every time I'm on the court, when hopefully you can do that before you turn into a senior. But, I would say, put it all out there. Just work really hard and see what happens.
What advice would you give those seniors out there that are looking to play on the next level and even getting into coaching?
I would say, for players who are interested in going into coaching, I would say try it and just go for it. I think you'll never know if that's for you or if it's not. I think that's really hard. It's like the unknown, you don't know if you're gonna love it or not. But I would say there's never a bad time to try. So you should try, and you should go for it.
What advice would you give those future assistant coaches out there looking to get into coaching?
Well, I guess it depends on where they're at right now. If they're already in college coaching, but if you, for some reason, if you aren't happy with your current position, I would say, if you look this goes for probably every sport in college coaching. There is so much turnover. There's so much coming and going. I would say keep trying, and like being at different places will teach you a lot, and it will kind of show you, you know, what is a good fit for you. If you work for a head coach, you know, what kind of head coach do you work well with? What isn't working for you? Like, what kind of coaching style do you enjoy working under? All those things. So I think you should always try and coach at a bunch of different schools to really figure out where you need to be.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the program at?
Could you repeat that really quick?
Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the program at?
Oh, I mean, I am on Instagram. The team's on Instagram. That's probably our most used social media source. We're actually trying to get into TikTok, so stay tuned for that. Not yet. And then of course our website has all relevant information on the team as well.
Thank you again, Coach Sophia Geier, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Brown as the assistant women's tennis coach.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. You can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Sophia, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.